Afternoon, everybody. Got a quick announcement off the top before I turn to your questions. Today, senior officials from the Department of Defense and the Russian Ministry of Defense signed a memorandum of understanding regarding measures to minimize the risk of in-flight incidents between coalition and Russian aircraft operating in Syrian airspace. With today's signatures, the MOU is now in effect. The MOU includes specific safety protocols for air crews to follow. These protocols include maintaining professional airmanship at all times, the use of specific communication frequencies, and the establishment of a communication line on the ground. The U.S. and Russia will form a working group to discuss any implementation issues that follow. The MOU does not establish zones of cooperation, intelligence sharing, or any sharing of target information in Syria. The discussions through which this MOU was developed do not constitute U.S. cooperation or support for Russia's policy or actions in Syria. In fact, far from it, we continue to believe that Russia's strategy in Syria is counterproductive, and their support for the Assad regime will only make Syria's civil war worse. The United States will continue to focus on advancing our interests in Syria. We will continue our efforts to go after ISIL, which poses a threat to us and the international community. We will continue to support a moderate opposition that is essential for a political resolution in Syria. We will continue to be the single largest donor in addressing the humanitarian catastrophe in Syria and beyond its borders. Unlike Russia, in those efforts, we are joined by a coalition of 65 partners. So that is the latest with regard to the memorandum of understanding with Russia. And again, that was signed a short time ago, earlier today. And with that, happy to take some questions. Bob.
Peter, I think you referenced a communications line on the ground or something like that. What is that about? And also, why are you not releasing the actual text of the understanding?
Yeah. First of all, in the second part of your question, it was at the request of the Russians that the memorandum in full not be shared. And with regard to the first part of your question, I can just tell you in broad terms that it's effectively another line of communication on the ground that would supplement any interaction that took place in the air.
Between where and where? I mean,
I'm not going to get into the details, but it's again, it's a line of communication that would be open between the Russians and the coalition in the event that there was an inability to communicate effectively in the air.
Is there a hotline?
Again, David, I'm just going to give you the basics here. We have a line of communication on the ground that serves as a backup, and that's the best way. That's the best way to describe it. The opportunity to have real-time conversations if necessary.
You said what country it's in?
I can't get into all the details of the memorandum of understanding, but this is something both sides have agreed to, as again sort of a backup in the event that there's a problem with communication in the air.
The communication between the Russian and the coalition. This is before any air operation over Syria?
I'm sorry, Joe, I'm not sure I understand your question.
The line of communication or any communications between Russia and the coalition will take place before any air operation?
No, I don't think you understood me. I apologize if it's on my end. But this would be a backup form of communication. There's a series of protocols in place that effectively are intended to avoid any sort of risk of a mid-air incident between our air crews and Russian air crews. Effectively, if they follow these protocols, we should not have the risk of engagement with Russian air crews over Syria. In the event there is an incident or engagement in the air, there are protocols that they can follow and an ability to engage with each other in the air to make sure everyone is safe and operating safely. And as a backup to that, there is a separate line of communication that is available should communication in the air break down for some reason. So this is an effort. I'm going to call it a line of communication. I honestly, I don't know technically what you want to call it, but just rest assured that there's a line between that is available to be able to resolve some of these issues, should it come to that, and our hope is it doesn't come to that.
Is it military to military? Can you say that?
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Peter,
Yes.
does the
Yes, Jennifer.
memorandum extend to Iraq, and do you have assurances from the Iraqi government that the Russians will not carry out airstrikes in Iraq?
This agreement is specific to Syria. My understanding is the Iraqis have said publicly that they're not calling for airstrikes. And for anything further, I'd ask you to refer you to the Iraqi government.
Problems if the Russians began carrying out airstrikes in Iraq?
I think we've expressed our concerns in the past about that potential, that hypothetical, and again, I'd refer to the Iraqis and let them speak for themselves as to exactly what they would like to see happen over Iraq.
Just a quick follow-up. Can you tell us what happened? We understand General Dunford's plane was at first not allowed to land in Erbil. Was that, what was the reason for that? What was the reason given by the Iraqi government?
Yeah. I'm learning some of this myself. My understanding that there was an issue with the flight plan. I don't know, quite honestly, all the details, but my understanding is the chairman was able to land in Erbil and is in fact, in Erbil, and whatever issues there were resolved.
Why did he go to Erbil first? Was it to deliver a message that to Baghdad that the Kurds are important and that they, I mean, was that a symbolic decision?
I'll let the chairman's office speak for his itinerary, but obviously the chairman felt it was important to go to Iraq. We have an ongoing effort in Iraq, close collaboration with the Iraqi government, and again, I don't want to speak to his full itinerary, but I think the secretary, when he visited Iraq, traveled to Erbil as well.
But did he go to Erbil first, the secretary? Before landing in Baghdad?
He did not, but again, I wouldn't read too much into the itinerary. There are a host of reasons why folks may travel to one location or another in terms of security and to be able to meet people in certain locations. So, again, I refer you to the chairman's office to his specific itinerary. Yes, Barbara.
While the negotiations or discussions were going on with the Russians about this agreement, they flew within 500 feet on one occasion and within 1,500 feet of U.S. fighter jets over Syria. So if they want flight safety and yet they're flying within 500 feet of U.S. aircraft, what makes you believe you can trust them?
Well, Barbara, I think you just highlighted why we need this kind of agreement in place. Our air crews continue to fly in a professional fashion, and this agreement now, this understanding, obligates the Russians to do the same. And we, again, call on them to abide by the protocols that they have now agreed to. And what you just described would not reflect the professional airmanship that this understanding now calls for.
What does it say that they're doing that even as they're negotiating or discussing flight safety with you, and yet at the very same time flying within 500 feet of U.S. aircraft and U.S. pilots over Syria? What does that say about their trustworthiness to you?
What it says to me is that the Russians need to abide by these flight safety protocols that they have now agreed to, because we don't want miscalculation and misunderstanding. The kinds of activities you just described could lend themselves to misunderstanding and to miscalculation, and that's certainly something we want to avoid. We do not agree with the Russians on their strategy in Syria. At a minimum, we can agree with them on the safe operations of flights over Syria between our air crews and theirs.
Can I just follow up on Jennifer's question? It seems fairly inconceivable, but who knows, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs flight crew, his U.S. Air Force flight crew, would have incorrectly filed any flight plans over Iraq in particular. This is a country they've been flying into for well over a decade. How could it possibly have been flight plan miscommunication?
So
it does beg credulity.
Well, again, I'm not there, so I don't know exactly what the discrepancies were. I just know that the chairman is on the ground. Iraq, the airspace over Iraq is a complicated place. The Iraqis have security concerns, understandably, given what's happening in their country. So I think we'll find out exactly what the discrepancy was here, but the chairman's on the ground safely, and I think that's what's most important here. And obviously this is something we would love to avoid with the Iraqis, but sometimes things happen, and we'll find out what the details were here. Yes, Tara.
Peter, given the number of close flights recently between Russian and coalition aircraft, what happens now that this is signed if there's another close call, if the Russians fly by another UAV or a coalition jet?
Yeah. Well, obviously they've signed this agreement. they are obligated under it, just like we are, to abide by the rules. And if there's an instance in which there's unprofessional conduct and they're not the kinds of safety protocols that are called for here, obviously we will raise those concerns with the Russians, and we'll take it from there. Our hope, of course, is that now that they've signed this, that they will abide by the professional airmanship that our crews are already showing over Syria right now. Tom?
Peter, does this apply to drones as well?
Yes, this covers both.
And drone on drone?
This covers all aircraft over Syria operated by Russia and the coalition.
So is there a separation you would like to see here? A mile, 2 miles, 20 miles? Is that part of the agreement? How much safe distance should be kept?
Yeah, safe distance is probably the key words you use there.
But what is the safe distance? Is that spelled out?
The agreement, again, I'm not going to get into all the details of the agreement.
Miles, feet? Or
Let me finish, Tom. It, again, calls for aircraft to maintain a safe distance. And again, I'm not going to walk through all the details here, but we have the most professional, capable air crews in the world. And they operate with professionalism every day over Syria. We're now calling on the Russians to do the same. And these crews, our crews certainly know exactly what a safe distance is. And the obligation is upon the Russians to maintain that safe distance, maintain that professional airmanship, just as our crews are displaying right now.
Could you give us a sense of that safe distance? Is it feet or a miles, or what is it?
I think it is safe to say that anything that could be deemed as threatening or hostile would represent a violation of this agreement, and it is very clear to our air crews what constitutes that right now, and they're able to identify right away when another aircraft has crossed that line, and that should be abundantly clear from this memorandum of understanding exactly what that is. There should be no question in the minds of the Russian pilots and the coalition air crews as to what the proper protocols are here.
And lastly, I understand when the two F-16s left Incirlik on the way to Raqqa and had to divert, the Russian aircraft was 20 miles away. So can we assume that that is a distance that the U.S. would like to see?
Again, I'm not going to get into distances with you, Tom, but our crews will know full well when a Russian aircraft, we hope it doesn't happen, but the potential for a Russian aircraft to violate these terms, it will be abundantly clear.
But Peter, just to be clear on your
Yes.
answer to that question to Tom, it sounds like there are no numbers spelled out in the agreement in terms of distance. Is it just terminology is safe distance, not X number of miles? Is that correct?
I'm not going to get into all the specifics because
What the numbers are, I'm just saying, are there numbers?
Yeah, safe distance, Bob, is the best way to look at this. This is the way the pilots themselves are viewing this, and this should give our pilots, again, if the Russians abide by it, some comfort, some measure of comfort that these kinds of incidents can be avoided altogether, and that there's no need for them to have an encounter if everyone's abiding by these rules. So let me go to the back. Yes, James first, then Tom.
Isn't it reasonable to think that the Russians' notion of safe distance might be different than the Americans' notion of safe distance, and so that the agreement would necessarily need to define in some way, because the Russians might say, well, to us, 5 miles is a safe distance. We're great pilots. We're better pilots than the Americans. It just seems like safe distance has to be defined, but are you saying it's not, or are you saying you're not going to tell us?
I'm telling you, James, that the protocols that are put in place here, that we've agreed to and the Russians have agreed to, should be abundantly clear to the pilots flying over Syria what's appropriate, what's not, what would be deemed as threatening and what's not. And that's why we're confident that this will ensure and encourage the safety of our pilots, our air crews over Syria. So again, safe distance, again, the other steps that are in here, and I'm not going to read through each and every one of them, will make it clear what you can and cannot do in proximity to our aircraft.
Just a quick follow-up. Do the actual pilots themselves have the ability to communicate now under this agreement in a way that they did not have before?
They've always had the ability to communicate. The protocols, I think it's safe to say, make it easier, less chance for miscommunication, and perhaps enable them to communicate more easily, more efficiently than they did in the past. I think that's fair to say. But again, James, I want to make the point that if the Russians abide by these rules, there would be no reason for them to have to engage audibly in communication, because they shouldn't even be that close to begin with. They shouldn't be in that kind of a situation.
We're just trying to understand what that close means, that's all. That's why we're asking.
Tolga.
Just to clarify the safe distance norm, is it including only the safe distance between the aircrafts, or also there are some conditions in the protocols indicating forcing Russian aircraft to stay away from the Turkish border in a safe distance as well, in terms of this Russian incursions a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, this specifically, Tolga, refers to aircraft and flights over Syria specifically.
Any other condition regarding this incursion?
This refers to aircraft specifically, this memorandum of understanding. We've made clear our concerns about the Russian incursions into Turkish airspace, NATO airspace. We've obviously raised those concerns, but this agreement, this memorandum of understanding, deals specifically with aircraft over Syria.
Can I just clarify on the communications for a second? You said it's easier. So is there a specific channel or frequency? What is it that makes it easier?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned here before in these conversations that the goal here was to have a specific frequency that they would use as the baseline, and that's a good example, Tom, of how this would be easier, more efficient, should they have to have those communications again. But these protocols, we would hope, would prevent that from even having to happen. Let me move over here. Go ahead. Sorry.
One follow-up and then a kind of separate question. You said that Russia asked the memorandum language not be released. What was their justification for that, and why did the U.S. agree?
Quite honestly, I don't know. I wasn't there for that part of the agreement, but I know it was a request that was made, and I'm not sure the full reason behind it. So.
And coming a little bit closer to home, Canada had elections last night. The Prime Minister-elect has said in the past that he would look to end Canada's involvement in anti-ISIS operations and also cut entirely the F-35 planned buy from the current government. Any reaction from the Pentagon, concerns about the fact that an ally may be leaving that coalition?
Well, obviously we noted the election results in Canada. It's a NATO ally, a NORAD partner, part of our counter-ISIL coalition, and we look forward to continuing the strong defense relationship we have with Canada moving forward. I think it's, again, we have that close relationship, and I think it'd be, they're a partner in the F-35 program. I think it'd be inappropriate for me to speculate on how that might change going forward. But they're a key ally of ours in so many ways, but particularly in defense issues, and we look forward to maintaining that relationship going forward, improving it.
Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit on the types of...
You might email too, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Since the Russians have been flying, can you elaborate on the numbers of unsafe encounters there have been, and any details on the types?
I don't have a list here. My understanding, there have been a handful of incidents. I think Barbara referred to a few, but again, our hope is these protocols prevent anything like that from happening going forward. That's certainly our hope and expectation.
And did that include both manned and unmanned aircraft? The unsafe?
Yes, this agreement covers both.
The unsafe ones. There have been incidents involving Russian intercepts of unmanned aircraft as well as manned aircraft.
Yeah, again, those incidents cause us concern. So the reason we wanted to have, and we're willing to at least talk to the Russians about this one limited area where we could find mutual understanding, and simply to promote the safety of our air crews and also the operation, our coalition air operations over Syria, including unmanned aircraft as well. Yes.
I don't know if you have a readout of General Chief of Staff's Dunford meeting with the Kurdish officials, but a couple of weeks ago, several Kurdish officials came out. They said they were complaining about the train and equip program, and they said that the weapons that promised supposed to be delivered to Peshmerga after May has been decreased by Baghdad, and there were no promise being made by the United States also after that. Do you have any comment on that?
I'm not aware of that. I don't have a readout of the chairman's meetings, so I'd refer you to his office, but I'm not aware of an issue with regard to that, and I think our support for the has been strong in terms of equipment, and I think you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in Erbil right now. I think that's representative of that sort of commitment.
Go one more on Syria. I think several weeks ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, there were different statements came out from the U.S. government, including Pentagon, on the airdrop for the Syrian moderate rebel in Syria, including YPG. At first, there was an attempt that the airdrop also will include the YPG, and they will be equipped. And then there was change in the statement. And do you have any comment why there was any change in the statement that the airdrop were not for the YPG, were just for the moderate rebel?
The airdrop, again, was for the Syrian Arab coalition. It was successful, and I'll just restate that. I mean, it went where it was intended to the people who were intended to receive it.
But that was not intended to deliver to be for YPG.
It was intended for the Syrian Arab coalition. I've got a tag team from Fox. I've got Lucas behind you. Who do I go to, Jennifer?
Lucas.
You're Lucas. I'm impressed. Not every correspondent would do that, so I'm doubly impressed.
Peter, do you trust the Russians?
Lucas, the fact that we have had to resort to a memorandum of understanding here to try and work out what should be standard protocol over Syria, it gives you an indication of our concern about Russia's activities, but our willingness to work with the Russians when it's in our own interests, and that's what's happening here. We are looking to the Russians to abide by these protocols to ensure safe flight operations over Syria, but let me reaffirm once again, this is a narrow understanding with the Russians dealing with a very specific issue. Russia's larger efforts in Syria, their strategy there, we've been quite clear, the Secretary's been quite clear. We don't agree with what they're doing, and that has not changed. We can agree on this limited basis to try and promote the safety of our air crews over Syria, and again, that's where things stand with Russia.
To date, there's statements from this building that say otherwise. The Russians, you say that the Russians are not striking ISIS. The Russians have signed agreements in Minsk. There's been numerous nuclear agreements that the Pentagon says the Russians aren't abiding by. What makes you think they will abide by this one?
Well, let me go back to where we were from the start. Our crews continue to fly in Syria every day. We continue to have situational awareness for our crews. We're doing everything we can beyond this understanding to make sure that our crews are as safe as possible, and we're going to continue to do that. So do not believe that this memorandum of understanding is the only thing we're doing to make sure our crews remain safe over Syria. I'm going to go to the back. I'm just going to move around a little bit.
To follow on that, you indicated that you don't particularly trust Russia, and that's why you've kind of signed this MOU in the first place. If that's the case, you don't trust Syria or Iran either. Why not do the same thing with them?
This is specific to flight operations over Syria, and at this particular moment in time, if we have an issue of an incident over Syria, it would most likely involve Russian aircraft because they're the ones flying over Syria right now. So I'm not sure the parallel there. We're doing this because of the risk right now that these air crews could have some sort of incident over Syria. We're trying to reduce that risk by, again, this memorandum of understanding with the Russians. Yes.
Does this MOU cover any coalition aircraft that could be flying in Syria, and have there been any feedback or concern raised by other coalition governments about this discussion?
This does include coalition aircraft as well, and we've been in consultation with our partner nations within the coalition throughout this entire process, so they're well aware of the memorandum of understanding and the terms that are within it. Jennifer.
Do U.S. pilots have permission to fire on Russian planes if the Russians do not abide by this protocol?
I'll just maintain what we've said from the very start. Our crews, our air crews, always have the right to defend themselves. Our hope with this memorandum of understanding is that the risk of any sort of incident in the air over Syria is reduced at a minimum, hopefully eliminated by this. But our crews, no matter where they're flying, have the ability to defend themselves if they feel threatened.
And on the Budget and Defense Authorization Act, is Secretary Carter still advising the President that he should veto the NDAA as it now stands?
Yes, the Secretary still supports the President's call for a veto of this for the reasons we've talked about from here, and the Secretary is detailed at length up on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. I got time for two more. Please.
Quick point. You say it covers the MOU covers the coalition. Does it also cover Syria, Syrian aircraft?
This is specific to Russian aircraft and coalition aircraft. And that's right now that's if there's a risk of incident right now, it involves Russian aircraft. So no, it does not cover Syrian aircraft.
And other times you said specifically threatening behavior. Were some of these earlier encounters, were some of those considered to be threatening on the part of the Russians?
I think it's safe to say that anything involving close proximity to an aircraft that is not a member of your coalition could be deemed as threatening. So those are the kinds of incidents we look to avoid here. And I think these protocols, if they're followed, will reduce that risk and reduce the chances of anything like that happening.
And then Afghanistan, any progress on that investigation, that initial casualty assessment?
Yeah. Waiting for our own update from Afghanistan on the initial civilian casualty component of that investigation. And I don't have a specific update for you now, but obviously we're waiting those results ourselves. And I'll do the last one here, Tolga.
Thank you. Peter, it seems that there's a new U.S. aircraft deployment in Incirlik. Do you have any detail that you can share with us on this?
My understanding, and I literally got this word as I came in, is that there are A-10s arriving in Incirlik, and I don't have the exact number, but I do. My understanding, literally, I got this word as I came in, that there are A-10s arriving at Incirlik, and this was part of a regular rotation that was planned. So
they're replacing some of the F-16s?
That's my understanding, but I literally walked in here with this, and I'm just sharing what I know at this point. And with that, I got to get to another. I'll squeeze one more in the back. Sorry.
One last question on the MOU.
Sure.
So it seemed like it was generally agreed upon on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any improvement since Friday on interaction between U.S. and Russian aircraft in Syria?
You mean in the air? Have there been?
Communication?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any incidents that have happened since then. So to me, again, that could be a reflection of the Russians abiding by the rules already. Our folks have been abiding by these rules from the start. This is standard protocol for our coalition air crews. So again, maybe that's an indication that the Russians will be abiding by this. We certainly hope so. But now this is in effect. Signatures were put in place today. And we'll go from there.
Who signed it on the U.S. side?
I'm not sure I can release that. Someone you know. I'll just leave it at that. So.
In previous rounds,
I won't be able to answer this, I'm sure, but.
Okay,
sure.
Earlier, the A-10s had not been sent to Syria because of concerns over air defenses there, and the A-10's close air support role. If you could give us anything on what the A-10s will be doing, if they'll be flying over Syria, any concerns there might be on the air defenses there.
Let me take that question. I'm sure we can give you the solid answer, but before I weigh in without getting 100% visibility on exactly what their role will be, we'll get that for you. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And Bob, I will actually try and get the answer to your question as well to make sure that I can release that publicly as to the signature. I'm going to try and find out. I just want to make sure we don't violate the terms of our agreement by disclosing that. So, all right, thanks, everyone.